question. So several years ago, the American Farmland Trust would say we're losing 2,000 acres of farmland a day, and I'm sure it's more now. And people just think of it as like, oh, we have so much land, it doesn't matter. We can build here, we can build there, but the cumulative effect is getting to a tipping point. And so now there's huge pressure to put solar projects on farmland, massive acres. So the state has a renewable portfolio standard, and 14% of the energy we consume or purchase, I'm not sure what the base is, but 14% of a number has to be solar. And so it's an arbitrary number, it's not based on science. So that number is arbitrary. And the state is hell-bent on doing that, even though our energy policy is a mess, and this will not help it. So right now energy prices are high, and so the legislature is doing anything they can to pretend that they're going to lower rates. So they're saying we're going to allow solar anywhere in the state. We're not going to let the counties tax it as private property, and we're not going to have stringent or even adaptive landscaping plans. So the solar people will get to do the basic landscaping, not pay taxes, and go anywhere they want. A total giveaway to the solar industry. And it just so happens that the Senate president who wrote the bill works for CF Renewables. So it's very scary. So there may be some changes to that, but that's a huge impact on land in Kent County because we've done such a good job in Kent County especially, but on the shore, of preserving our farmland, protecting it and respecting it. And now we've got this bullseye on us because the solar developers are drooling over all this open space because that's where they make the most money. It's cheaper land, believe it or not, even though they're paying outrageous sums of money for leases, just outrageous, which impacts our local farmers because they can't compete. So 60 to 40%, I'm not quite sure of the number in Kent County, is rented land. So as the solar drives up the rent, takes away land from production, then the pressure to rent gets higher, and then the rents are higher, and you can't do the math on that to make it profitable. So that's just one unintended consequence of, not to mention the fact that we'll reduce our grain production, and we're already importing grain for the chicken industry, and then there's a chance the chicken industry could leave the state, which would be devastating to the Eastern Shore. So they do pay taxes. So there was a project in Queen Anne's County that paid several $1 million in taxes. And I don't know the exact math on that, but the state was going to override that and say, oh, they're just going to pay no additional tax. I don't even know what the tax rate was going to be, but it's some ridiculously low one. It might have been connected to the agricultural rate that's paid for that land. So, but it was going to take away any ability for the counties to tax at whatever level they want. And I think we're going to get rid of that. I think we've lobbied against that because the Maryland Association of Counties came out big time against that. And so they just did a little overreach. If they hadn't had that in there, they probably could have gotten away with doing what they're doing on landscaping and that, and then the ability to just place it anywhere they want. But yeah, basically the state has decided that farmland is less valuable to producing food than it is for producing solar. And then you mentioned the transmission lines, so they haven't even talked about the cost of upgrading the transmission lines, and that gets passed on to consumers. And plus, not to be like crazy anti-solar person, because I do have solar panels on my barn roofs, but it's incredibly inefficient. So it's inefficient to produce solar, it's inefficient to transmit it. You know, it loses 33% of the production from point A to point B as you go through the transmission lines. I mean, it's just a monumental disaster when you look at it from production and economics. And the amount of land that it takes, and then it's only 25 years. So that land will be permanently out of production. I know some solar people are saying that it can be reverted back to agriculture. That's what the chairman of the House committee that heard that bill the other day said, oh, you can return it back, but you cannot. And no solar project in California, which has had them longer, has ever gone back into production. So it just won't, and they'll just turn it into something else, which brings me to like data centers, warehouses, nuclear power plants, whatever it's going to be, will go on the ruined land.
Right.
So it would just become a wasteland. And even if they don't do anything with it, what happens to those panels? Yeah, they are worried. And farmers have this mantra of property rights, and it's a very interesting dilemma. So, you've got a farmer, he's older, most of them are men, so they're older, and the next generation, doesn't want to farm. So they have this opportunity to make a ton of money, and they mostly lease the land, but there are some instances where the solar company actually purchases it. And so that's a dilemma, yeah. And so we have to think of land. Is it private property? I know, the Native Americans were saying we only borrow it for the next generation, our land. And we, in this current environment, tend to think that it's up to our right to do whatever we want with it. But we live in a community, so what you do affects what I do. And so at some point, you got to say, are they pushing this too far? Is this just, and I think that the farming community, because we has really come to grips with that now. It's just because the scale of it is so big. It's not just a little house here or, I don't even know. It's just so big now, and the land grab is so thirsty for warehouses and data centers, and these they're just extractive industries, so they don't give back to the community. I was at a hearing the other day for this Millington solar project. It's 80 acres, and they're like, oh, it's going to bring jobs, but there are no jobs. There are no jobs for that. So it's just dishonest for them to say that, and it looks bad. It takes away their credibility. So there's no jobs in solar. There's very few jobs in data centers, very few jobs in warehouses. And are they good jobs? Yeah, they wouldn't be afraid of unions if they were good jobs. And it's really hard to be against solar. Like, I've been a Democrat my whole life, which is really hard to be a Democrat now too, right? But I've been a Democrat. I'm a conservationist. I just put in this beautiful habitat on my farm for pollinators and birds and stuff. And, I'm not like crazy right-wing anti. But when you look at the math of solar and you look at the impact of the land, and it's even on deserts, the impact on the ecosystem there is just, because we don't see it, we don't appreciate it, and because we're human, we think we can control it, or we think we deserve to control it, and it's ours. And it's the hubris and the arrogance of solar is just, and I know people want to have something to grasp onto, and they want to think that this will save us so we don't have to change our behavior. We don't have to maybe drive less, maybe drive slower, maybe lower the heat in our houses, or lower the, and the same with the air conditioning. We don't want to give up anything. We don't want to change how we live. We want to have every device on the planet. We want to have 6 devices, and you multiply that times billions. That's a lot of electricity. So instead of cutting back and living within our means, we just have to rape the land to satisfy our thirst for electricity. And it's never going to end well. Yeah, so Maryland has at least a $3 billion budget deficit and no plan to fix it. So what they're doing is they're nickel and diming projects such as Project Open Space. They've zeroed out the arts that's being decimated. All these small nonprofit groups are going to be impacted by the cuts that they're doing, and it doesn't make a dent in a $3 billion budget. So now their newest plan is to tax services, which is going to impact everybody every day, all the time. So if you're a farmer and you get something repaired, you're going to have to pay taxes. If you have IT help, you're going to have to pay a service tax. I mean, the list goes on and on. They're taxing services left and right. It's going to hurt all businesses, and agriculture especially, because we use so many services. And it's going to be a hidden tax. It's going to be a regressive tax, and it's not going to solve the problem. So it's just adding insult to injury. Yeah, no leadership.
Jeez.